Hi there, my name is Alanna and today I'm going to be sharing with you my labor and delivery story. In this story we have a failed induction, an emergency C-section, and a NICU stay. So stay tuned, I will walk you through everything, but I just wanted to take a moment to introduce my daughter. This is, I guess, the first time here on my channel. So this is my daughter Victoria. Hello my love. This is my daughter Victoria. If you are familiar with my channel, you know on Instagram that my name is ALANNAVICTORIA. And yes, my daughter did get my middle name. And I really considered if I wanted to give my daughter my middle name as her first name. But Victoria is a really special name in my family because my grandfather, her great-grandfather, who has been gone for 5 years now, his name was Victor. And my dad and my brother's middle name is also Victor. So as much as she's named after me, she's really named after our whole family, my dad's whole side of the family. So this is Victoria, and Victoria's middle name is Marion, so her name is Victoria Marion. And her middle name is really special to us because my other grandmother, so not married to Victor, my other grandmother's name was Marion. And my husband also had a grandmother named Marion, and my husband's other grandmother's middle name was Marion. So 3 of her 4 great-grandmothers had a connection to Marion, and the other one was married to Victor. So this is Victoria Marion, and just completely in love with her, in love with her name, and yeah, this is our sweet little girl. And we just love her so much. She's just the most perfect little girl. She's 5 months old now. I did sit down and film my birth story, I want to say around 6 weeks postpartum, but I was tired and she was tired and there was just a lot going on, and I watched back the footage. It wasn't good. So I decided to refilm it here at 5 months postpartum. Really quickly, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that predominantly we are a beauty channel. I still do have beauty content that I want to share, but I also have mom content that I want to share. So bear with me for the next little bit as I try my best to blend the two. And yeah, anyways, if you have any questions about my experience as a mom, leave them down below because they will either inspire videos or maybe a Q&A. But this is Victoria. She's the best part of my life. For part of this filming, she's going to be with me, and for part of the time, she's going to be with her dad. So thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. I hope you enjoy this story, and ultimately, I just hope that this gives any pregnant women out there just more information about how your birth could go, and that even if you have a failed induction and a C-section and a NICU stay, that it can be a hard but ultimately worthwhile experience. So anyways, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about my birth story. I will start by saying that I filmed this video originally about 6 or 7 weeks postpartum, and I was watching back the footage and I looked so tired because I was really tired. So here we are, 5 months postpartum. I have a beautiful little 5-month-old baby girl, and we're gonna actually do this. We're gonna actually post this one. And if you're seeing it, I did post it. So to summarize my pregnancy, it was very normal. It was very healthy. It was very uneventful, save for heartburn, which in the world of heartburn, honestly, probably wasn't that bad, but I had never experienced heartburn before. So I found that to be probably the worst part of my pregnancy. And then of course, in the last couple of weeks, like I was tired, I was sore, and I just wanted to meet my baby. So very uneventful pregnancy, like to the point where it's probably at my like 30, whatever appointment was, around 35-ish weeks, let's say. I was at that appointment with my OB, and she was going through, she's like, any cramping? No. Bleeding? No. This? No. That? No. This? No. 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 And she looked at me, she's like, are we sure you're pregnant? And we both laughed because obviously we had both, you know, seen the ultrasound results, and I was obviously pregnant. So about 6 weeks before my due date, that's when I started having my ultrasounds at the hospital. And I think I had one 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out, and then 1 week out, something like that. There were 3 of them. So at my 6-week one, you know, everything's normal, healthy, fine. But the nurse takes a look at, you know, what's coming up on the images, and she says, you are going to have a really big baby. And I was just thinking, oh my God, how big is this baby going to be? So again, at my next 2 ultrasounds at the hospital, again, the scans are saying that I'm going to have this really big baby. Now, what I will share is throughout my entire pregnancy, I had a bit of a feeling that I was going to end up having a C-section. My mom had C-sections for me and my brother. Most of my friends have had C-sections, even if they attempted a vaginal delivery. So I'd kind of, in the back of my mind, made peace with the idea that I could very well have a C-section. But I did want to try for a vaginal delivery. So after all those ultrasounds and meetings with my doctor, we looked at the information, we looked at my profile, we looked at, that my mom had C-sections, and I was offered to have a voluntary C-section. And I thought about it and I spoke with some friends, and ultimately what I told my doctor is, if it ends up being a C-section, that's fine, but I would at least like to try. And she said, that's fair, you don't know what your body is capable of until you try, so let's try. So my doctor and I decided that we would do an induction at 37 weeks. So a full-term baby, full-term healthy baby, but just we would do an induction. And based on my risk profile, based on the information available to us, that seemed like the best path forward. So the estimates for my baby at 37 weeks, they believed I was going to have a 10.5 to 11 pound baby. And I was just like, yeah. So I had read online that the estimates can be off by up to 30%. And I'm not even joking. I was looking at all my baby clothes. Like, I bought very minimal newborn clothing because one of my best friends had quite a large baby and he went straight into 0 to 3 and very quickly into 3 to 6. And another one of my friends had a very large baby, didn't touch his newborn. So I had like maybe 3 newborn sleepers. One that I purchased at the beginning of my pregnancy when I went to the Eras Tour concert in Windsor with one of my friends. I bought it at Target. It's so cute, has little whales on it. And then 2 or so that I received at my shower. So I had no newborn clothing. And in fact, to the hospital, I did bring a newborn outfit. Like, I'm like, oh, maybe it'll fit. But then I also brought 0 to 3. So I'm just gearing up to have this massive baby. So we show up at the hospital around 6 p.m. We did have our overnight bags packed, but we were told that we would most likely be going home that night and then returning in the morning. So we went to labor and delivery, and I was given a dose of Cervidil, which is basically like a string. They call it a tampon, but that's like not the right word for it at all. It's literally just a string with hormones on it. Or in it, that gets inserted up in your vagina, up by your cervix, and the idea is that it basically helps ripen your cervix, like helps get things going. So we get that put in, and they monitored me for, I don't know, like an hour or something like that. It was very uneventful. We go home, and I was like a little bit uncomfortable, but I think I was mostly uncomfortable from being pregnant rather than uncomfortable from the Cervidil. So the Cervidil was in there. It was fine. Like, there was like a little bit of cramping, which I would describe as like a mild period cramp, which in the world of giving birth, not that bad. So in the morning, we go back to the hospital, we go back to labor and delivery. They check everything, and I'm like a centimeter dilated, like nothing. And so basically they give us the option, we can either do Cervidil again and again up to 4 times, or we could move on to basically more like intense options. Looking back on it, maybe I should have done another round of Cervidil or 2, but I really don't think it would have made a difference for me. So we spoke with my doctor and we decided that we would try something else. And we agreed that I wasn't leaving the hospital until I had my baby. Which I was 100% down for because, like by the time you get to end of pregnancy, like you just want to meet your baby. So my doctor recommended that we try misoprostol, which for the rest of my time at labor and delivery was called Meso, and I'm just going to call it Meso because I think I'll mispronounce it every single time. So Meso is a pill that you can take up to every 4 hours to help encourage giving birth. So I take Meso probably, I want to say 3 times, so doing this for about 12 hours, and throughout this I am getting some cervix checks, and really like nothing's happening. Like I think we maybe got to 2 centimeters. But on Meso, my water did break, and it broke in probably the most hilarious way possible. So when they tell you don't bring like slippers, like bring like Crocs or something to the hospital, do that. I will do that next time. Instead, I was wearing these very same slippers. And so I stood up, went to go to the bathroom, and as I get out of the hospital bed, it's just me and a nursing student, no doctor, and of course at this point my husband had gone to grab us some food. So my husband's out of the room. Doctor's nowhere to be found. Just me and like a nursing student go to the bathroom. And it just, like Niagara Falls, burst. Like I just stood up and it was all over the floor. And the nursing student and I just look at each other. I'm like, I am so sorry. I didn't know that was going to happen. She's like, no, it's okay. And we both just start laughing because it's like, it's all over my slippers. Thankfully, I was able to wash them. It's all over the floor. And we like, there was just nothing to do but laugh. So I go to the bathroom. But I think my water breaking was really what I was feeling. So I'm feeling pretty encouraged at this point. I'm like, okay, great. My water's broken. Things are happening. So we tell the doctor and we look at, again, how everything's going and we decide to start oxytocin. Actually, wait, one other thing. Before my water broke, we decided that we were going to try the Foley catheter. And I was really scared of the Foley balloon and really did not want to do it. Yeah, I did not want to do the Foley. One of my friends said it really hurt. And I have to say, of everything in my birthing experience, the Foley catheter truly was the worst. They tried to put it in twice and it failed. It just kind of slipped out. And like, I was just like the entire time the doctor was putting it, I was just like, I'm so sorry. And I'm just swearing and swearing. It just hurt so much. It was the worst. So we give up on that. And then shortly thereafter, my water broke without the Foley in. And then we decided that since the Foley didn't work for me and like it really hurt, like it was awful, I will never do that again. We decided to switch to oxytocin. So at some point in this video, I say that the Foley catheter is probably the most painful part of my labor experience. And I stand by that. That was the worst. But coming in at number 2 was also really painful. And that was actually getting my IV. When I had written out my birth plan, I'd originally said no students. But then I met some of the students who were sort of shadowing the nurses and they weren't really doing any procedures. They were just there like watching, learning, and like being helpful, like bringing me like wet towels to like, you know, dab my forehead off with, you know, filling up my water. So they were being like super helpful. So I was like, okay, maybe I was a little too extreme on this and, you know, students are okay. So they had the student do the IV on me. And the first time they messed it up and it really hurt. And I was like, oh, you know what? It's okay. Second time's the charm. Well, second time they messed it up and that really hurt. So then they had the main nurse do it and she messed it up and it hurt. And then I was like, look, you guys have tried 3 times. They're like, yeah, we're going to call in like the head nurse. So she did it and it hurt, but at least it worked. So, and I'm not like someone who's like, oh, needles are scary. Like I've had IVs before. This was the worst. So yeah, there's that part. So we are going to film this next little part with Victoria here. She's been hanging out with my husband today downstairs, but she missed me and it's almost time for her to eat. So we're going to film as much as we can, cuddling. Yeah, this is Victoria. So around noon, my water broke and shortly thereafter we started oxytocin. And I was really afraid to start that one because I heard that it really hurt. But at this point my water had broken and my doctor said that basically I had 18 hours to get this little thing out, otherwise the risk of infection sets in. So we start the oxy and I feel nothing. Mildly uncomfortable, maybe like a period cramp. And so they're upping it every couple hours and it's basically not doing anything for me and they're upping it. And by about 10 p.m. I was on the maximum dose and including in that time I had like a 2 or 3 hour nap where they just kept upping it while I slept. So I wake up from my nap and the nurses come in and they're like, yeah, so we don't like tend to up this while you're sleeping, but you know, you seemed fine. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel anything. I feel like a bad period cramp. And at that point they send the OB in. So my OB had finished at 7 p.m. that night. It was now like ballpark 10 o'clock, sometime between 10 and midnight. And the next OB on shift was actually the person that she runs her practice with. So I was like pretty familiar with her. She had delivered one of my friend's babies. Really, really sweet lady. So she comes in and she's definitely not someone who's like a C-section pusher. What I really appreciated was at no point did I feel pressured into having a C-section. But she comes in and she says, look, she's like, look, your water broke about 10 hours ago. You've got about another 6 to 8 hours before the risk of infection sets in. and you have dilated to 2 centimeters. And I say, yeah. And so she says, look, the next doctor, she's like, I'm not a C-section pusher, but the next doctor definitely is, the one who's on call at 7 a.m. So she said, basically, I can have a C-section with her tonight or a C-section with the male doctor tomorrow. And no offense to male OBs, but I just don't really think men should be OBs, and I didn't really want men involved in this process for my care. So, looked at all the options, and that we got, she said, and the other thing she said is, you know, and I had been offered an epidural a couple of times at this point, but I just didn't really feel like I needed one. And so we get to this point, and she says, look, once you're on the max level of oxytocin, you should be begging me for an epidural. You should be like crying, you should be in pain. And I said, yeah, I would really like another Tylenol or 2 to take the edge off. And she says, yeah, if you're asking for Tylenol at this point, like, labor's not progressing. And I said, clearly. And so I talked about with my husband, and, you know, I was really comfortable with the concept of having a C-section, which I'm going to talk a little bit about my advice at the end. But I was really comfortable with that as an option for me, and especially because my mom had had one having me, I felt like that was probably where I was going to land. So I consented to having the C-section, and I decided that if the option was a man tomorrow or this lovely woman today, and by today at this point I mean it's like midnight, so it's technically tomorrow, I said let's just do it. Let's just get the show on the road. So I consented, and around 12:30 or so they start prepping up the room. They, you know, get the anesthesiologist on call, all of that. So by about 1:30 in the morning, I was getting my spinal tap. I was in the room, I was there, and things were happening. So one thing I really did appreciate was that my husband was able to be in the room with me. So while I got my spinal tap, he wasn't there. He was being like scrubbed in for he was being scrubbed in for surgery and all set up. But basically by the time I was laying on the table, he was brought in, and he was like up by my shoulders. I really appreciated that the doctors really like spoke through what they were doing, really explained to me what was happening. And I have to say, the tugging sensations were wild. Like, it was the weirdest feeling. But it didn't hurt. It just, the tugging was weird. Hi, my girl. The tugging was very weird. So they get the baby out fairly quickly. Actually, most of the C-section operation is spent sewing you back up. So my daughter was born at 2:04 that morning in January. Hi. And my placenta was out at 2:06, and then they started sewing me back up. So they had my daughter, they quickly weighed her, and my 11-pound baby turned out to be an 8.5-pound baby with just a very big head. So maybe it was all for naught, and maybe we should have waited another week or two, but you know, you only have the information, that's medically available. So I think we made the best choice with the information we had. But yeah, she came out at 8.5 pounds. So this is where things start to get a little bit wild. So I get sewn up, the C-section was fine, the team was great, and I get to see my daughter. At this point I don't get to hold her because I'm still like super drugged up, but my husband gets to spend an hour with her while I'm just being sewed up, and then I'm brought into the room where I finally get to hold my little girl. And I'm holding her, and it's like 4 in the morning at this point, or 3:30 in the morning. Hi. Yeah. Let me feed you in a minute, okay? So I get to hold her, and I'm just in love. She's so soft. And I remember telling my husband, like, I could have 5 more of these. She's just perfect. We noticed that her breathing was a little bit off, and the nurses agreed. And so we sent her that night to the NICU. So we'd spent some time together. She got a little bit of colostrum, and then she was off to the NICU just for a night to see what's going on. And while it definitely hurt to be separated from my daughter, at that point in time, I knew that she was safe, and I knew that I'd been up for basically 24 hours and just had a surgery and was exhausted. So I'm wheeled off to my room, fall asleep, and I have to take pain meds every 3 hours. which really worked out well for me because what my doctor said the best way to have my milk supply come in was to pump every 3 hours. So I'm up every 3 hours pumping and taking my drugs. By the morning, what we learn about our daughter is that basically because I had that induction and my labor didn't progress, that her body didn't get the signal to clear out the amniotic fluid from her lungs. So she needed just a couple days in the NICU. Hi, my girl. She needed just a couple... Oh, are you hungry, girl? Okay, we're going to pause for a second. We'll get to her, a summary of her NICU. Yeah, okay. We're going to feed her, and then we'll talk about the NICU. Okay, so she had a snack. I had a snack. If you are a breastfeeding mom, you know how hungry that you can get. So let's touch briefly on her NICU stay. So my daughter ended up spending about a week in the NICU. She had... Hi. I love you too. So my daughter ended up spending about a week in the NICU. Her primary problem, which was the first 3 or 4 days, was that she had amniotic fluid stuck in her lungs because her body didn't get the hormonal kind of signal to clear her lungs. Normally if you have a vaginal delivery, it would kind of get squeezed out. But because my induction failed and I never really got to active labor, she didn't get the hormonal signal, and then she also, thank you, my dear. And then she also didn't get that squeeze. So it's one of those things where, I mean, at the time, it felt awful, and it was really hard on me and my husband, but you know, something that I kind of took a lot of comfort from, other than the fact that she was getting great care and her nurses absolutely loved her. But something that I took a lot of comfort from at the time was knowing that, was that there wasn't anything actually wrong with her. Like, there wasn't something that would be an ongoing problem for the rest of her life. She just needed that little bit of extra support. So she had that extra support. And then what was really frustrating is just as that issue was cleared and we were getting ready to go home, boom, she had jaundice. So she ended up spending basically 2 days under the UV lights. Now, by the time we were treating the jaundice rather than the fluid in her lungs, love you too, I was able to stay in a pediatric room with her. And something that was really frustrating about her pediatric stay, so I was exclusively feeding at the time we were pumping and still getting into the swing of nursing, but exclusively providing my baby with breast milk. Because I was no longer a patient, I didn't get fed at the hospital, but I was her food source. So we ended up spending like $30 a day basically on hospital food or takeout to feed me, so that way I could feed her. She spent some time under the lights to get her jaundice under control, and then by the time we got to take her home, she was absolutely perfect. But we ended up taking her home. But we ended up taking her home after a week in the hospital. So that was really hard on us and completely exhausting. But we were just so happy by the time it was over, and we were so happy to have her home with us. And truly one of the worst feelings in the world is being discharged from the hospital and having to leave your baby there. But we have her here with us now, and she's perfectly healthy and meeting all of her milestones, and just she's completely perfect. So, you know, it was all okay. And I think one of the other reasons, when I originally filmed this at 6 weeks postpartum, I feel like I was still kind of like reeling from that, but now I'm able to look back on it and just be thankful for having this sweet girl here with us. So one challenge that we did have to overcome, though, because she had that time in the NICU where she was being fed my breast milk through a bottle, is she got really used to we called it the easy life of the bottle. And so it took us about 3 weeks to transition her to being exclusively nursed. And so now she's exclusively nursed. She's just a little breastfeeding champ. And it's something that we both really enjoy being able to do together. So if you are a NICU mom or struggling with breastfeeding, just know that it can take some time to get there, and you can do it, and it is hard work, but it is worth it. So if you'd like a video on my breastfeeding tips / like establishing a supply, let me know. I'm happy to share about that. It's something I've become really passionate about in the last couple of months with her. But I'm just really proud of myself and proud of her that we have established such a great breastfeeding relationship, and actually to the point that we've been able to donate some milk to friends, which is really rewarding to me. But the Coles notes is every 3 hours when I had to take my pain meds for my C-section, I pumped for 15 minutes. That's basically the summary. There's more to it, but that's basically, hi, basically the summary. So remember how I told you how I was going to have that massive baby, right? So she came out at 8.5 pounds and she was drowning in newborn clothes and was in newborn clothes for the first 6 weeks. So early on in our time home with her, I want to say it was like day 2, we actually ended up going to Carter's. Carter's is definitely the best place to buy premium newborn clothes because they always have some in stock, like, you know, in Canada, otherwise you often have to mail them in. I have seen premium newborn at Target, bought newborn at Target before, but we don't have that in Canada. So if you're in Canada, definitely Carter's is the best place to get some premium newborn clothes. And so she was drowning in them. And so we had to buy a bunch of newborn sleepers and onesies and newborn, because she was drowning in 0 to 3 and drowning in newborn. She didn't need preemie. But if you do need to pick up some clothes on the way home, keep that in mind. I also wanted to throw in a note here. I did make a labor plan. For the most part, it wasn't something that we actually ended up looking at or consulting during my labor. I was able to like fully inform my own choices. I knew my own mind. There were some things that I had written out that ended up changing, but I was okay with that. I do think it's really helpful though to write out your labor plan so that way you have the opportunity, I think, to go through the thought process of what do you want if that, what do you want if this, like just to kind of go through with it and go through with it with, you know, your partner or whoever is going to be your support person during birth. So if you're not able to speak up for you, they can. Like I said, there were some things like the no students that I sort of like changed my mind on while I was there. And it's totally okay to change your mind while you're there. But if you're not able, for whatever reason, to know or change your own mind, it's good to have it written down and it's good to have your birthing partner understand that. So I had what's considered a failed induction because the induction tried and failed. And I had what is considered an emergency C-section, although I consider it the most chill emergency C-section ever. Emergency because it was not planned, but I don't really feel like I identify with the term emergency C-section because, you know, the baby wasn't in danger, I wasn't in danger. It was very calm, it was very logical. I was awake the whole time, and overall I feel like I had a really positive experience. I will say that one thing that I found really helped me going into my labor and then recovering from a C-section was just being very comfortable with the idea that that was something that could happen. I think that when you get too tied to specifics about how you want to give birth, you don't necessarily really give yourself the space for what could happen in your case, in your body. Of course, it's great to have a preference. Obviously, I did not prefer to have a C-section. But I was really comfortable with it. One thing I did before my induction, especially knowing that so many inductions do fail, is I had phone calls with 2 of my best friends who both had C-sections, and both of them actually following their C-section of their first child, which was an emergency, like an actual emergency, not my super chill one, but you know, actual emergencies. They opted to have a scheduled C-section after. So I had a really good chance after for their second baby. So I had a really good chance to just ask them both questions about healing and recovery and what to expect. And I really just feel like I went into it all with a really good mindset. So yeah, so that is my labor and delivery story, my technically emergency C-section, my failed induction, our NICU stay. But now I'm really able to say 5 months later, holding my really sweet baby girl, that everything was worth it to have her here with us. I love her so much. She is the best part of my life. She's the best part of our entire family's lives, and we all just love her so much. So that's my story. I have predominantly been a beauty blogger. Hi. 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 So I have predominantly been a beauty blogger here on YouTube. I will be continuing to share beauty content, but there's also a lot of mom content I want to share. So if you have any questions, if you have any questions as a new mom that I can answer for you, leave them down below. Maybe we'll do a Q&A, or maybe it'll give me some topics to consider for a video. But yeah, anyways, and I'm sorry that I haven't had a chance to post much lately. Between recovering from a C-section, having a newborn, learning how to breastfeed, and then one of my close family members been having a lot of health issues. just been a lot going on. But I'm back, I'm here, I'm feeling good, and I've still got 7 months of maternity leave left, so I'm looking forward to sharing the next chapter of my motherhood journey with you guys, and continuing to share beauty content. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye.